The views and opinions expressed on this podcast is solely of the creator and may not necessarily reflect the views, thoughts, or opinions of the listener. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. ChatGPT and AI technologies were not used or harmed in the creation of this podcast. This podcast is 100% human made by me, your host, Melanie. And this is Under the Moon Paranormal Presents Ohio Legend. Hey guys, it's season 4 premiere time. Can you believe it? Season 4, here we come. This episode is brought to you by April's 2026 pink moon. The April full moon promises to be one of the most sensual and insightful of the year. During this period, intuition becomes stronger, emotions deepen, and inner contradictions require conscious resolution. The full moon always symbolizes the culmination of the lunar cycle, a moment that is hidden becomes visible. Things that are unseen become seen. And we have the opportunity to see the results of our previous efforts. Just letting that car pass. Emotion, clarity, and heightened intuition is at full force in this full moon. Everything that begun during the new moon, anything that you were trying to manifest, hits its highest point during the full moon. It is completed, veiled, or requires a decision. The full moon that occurs on April 2nd at 4:13 on the 15th lunar day of the lunar calendar in the sign of Libra. Tell me how to pronounce it if I'm pronouncing it wrong. The opposite in the sun and Aries. The axis symbolizes the interaction between I and we, personal boundaries, and partnership commitments. The moon in this strives for harmony, but can also cause emotional swings, mood swings, a desire to control feelings, and avoid conflicts. This is a good time to look at important relationships from a fresh perspective and set priorities and boundaries. So that is your full moon report. So this season, we're going to introduce a new segment called Strange News. So after every full moon report from here on out, we'll have a strange news article because Ohio always seems to be in the news. So for this month, we are going to talk about Afro Man. So this says on March 18th, 2026, an Ohio jury on Wednesday sided with Afro Man in a civil lawsuit brought by the sheriff's deputies who accused him of defamation and invasion of privacy for mocking him in several of his music videos. In August of 2022, police in Adams County, Ohio, raided Afro Man's home, unfounded suspicions of drug trafficking and kidnapping. In retaliation, the Because I Got High rapper released several music videos aimed at the officers, including one called Lemon Pound Cake, which included some home security footage of the raid. The Lemon Pound Cake video has been viewed for more than 3 million times to this date, and that view has only gone up since this case ended. The plaintiffs, 4 deputies, 2 sergeants, and a detective, said they suffered emotional distress, embarrassment, ridicule, loss of reputation, and humiliation as a result of Afro Man's video. However, it took a jury less than a day to rule in favor for Afro Man, finding him not liable for any of the claims filed against him. Prior to the verdict, Afro Man testified before the court where he said, "I got freedom of speech. After they run around my house with guns, kick down my door, I got the right to kick a can in my backyard, use my freedom of speech, and turn my bad time into a good time. None of this would be going on if they did their research and did things right," he added. "So all of this is their fault, and now they want to sue me for their mistake." So make sure you check out the Lemon Pound Cake video on YouTube on Afro Man's channel because it's great. And then also make sure you look up some of the footage of these deputies being interviewed, especially Deputy Lemon Pound Cake. So that was a win for freedom of speech. So episode 1 of season 4, we're going to do a unsolved mystery. Dun, dun, dun. In the early hours of April 1st in 2006, Brian Randall Shaffer, a 27-year-old medical student at The Ohio State University, disappeared in Columbus, Ohio. He had spent the previous night on March 31st having drinks with friends at a campus area bar to mark the start of spring break. He later became separated from them, and they assumed he had just gone home. So security footage from outside the second floor entrance recorded Shaffer briefly speaking to 2 women just before 2 a.m. before walking out of the frame of the video. No video shows him exiting the building, and he has not been seen or heard from since that moment. The case received national media attention, of course, because he just disappeared. Shaffer's disappearance has been especially puzzling to investigators because the bar had no other publicly accessible exits at the time because part of the building was under construction. Columbus police have explored several theories about what happened. Some scrutiny has focused on a friend who was with Shaffer that night, though he was advised not to take a polygraph test. Other speculation has included a possible connection to the purported smiley face killer, possibly, but police rejected any link to any other alleged killer, consistent with the FBI and other agencies. It has also been suggested that Shaffer might be alive and living some else under a new identity. So a little background on Brian Shaffer. He was born February 11th, 1979. He grew up in Pickerington, Ohio, a suburb outside of Columbus. Randy and Renee, he's the oldest of their sons. He graduated from a local high school in 1997 and went to Ohio State University for his undergraduate work. 6 years later, he graduated with a degree in microbiology. Following that, Shaffer began studies at the OSU College of Medicine in 2004. During his second year there in March of 2006, his mother passed away from mesothelioma. Shaffer's friends say that although he disappeared, he appeared to be handling it well. Her death was very hard for him. During his time at medical school, Shaffer had become romantically involved with another medical student named Alexis. She, along with their family and friends, believed that Brian would probably be proposing marriage to her, probably later that year because, they graduated. So him and his girlfriend had a trip planned to Miami for the beginning of spring break in April. Tropical locations such as Miami attracted Shaffer. He liked really relaxed lifestyles. He told his friends that despite his decision to pursue his medical career, his real ambition was to start a band playing in the music industry. Okay, so keep that in mind. That was his ultimate dream, was to become a musician. So that's a little bit of background. So let's talk about Brian Shaffer and his roommate, William Florence. Some people call him Clint. They walked to a saloon called the Ugly Tuna. The Ugly Tuna Saloon in Columbus. It's like a university area. It's like a bar for college students. So they're eager to blow off steam from their spring break finals, before spring break. Around 10 p.m., Shaffer called his girlfriend to confirm their trip to tell her that he loved her. Wagner had headed to his parents' house in Toledo before reuniting. Wagner's Alexis's last name. So she was not with Brian at this time. She was in Toledo visiting her parents before they went to their trip to Miami, which they, thought maybe he was going to propose while they were down in Miami. After some shots and some beers at the Ugly Tuna Saloon, the two men ambled to the Arena District at Short North, I think that's a street, where they met Meredith Reed, Florence's friend. So Clint's friend, Meredith, they met up with, who offered to drive them back to the Ugly Tuna Saloon. As security footage outside of the Ugly Tuna Saloon has confirmed, all three of them rode the escalator to the bar's second-story entrance around 1:15 a.m. For some reason, Shaffer reemerged outside before 2 a.m., and that was him talking to those two girls in that security footage. Florence and Reed tried calling him several times, but he didn't answer, and they went home when the bar closed, assuming that Brian had also went home. Calls from his father, Randy, and his girlfriend also went unanswered all weekend. On Monday morning, Brian Shaffer missed his flight to Miami. He was reported as a missing person later that day. The camera did not record him leaving shortly after when the Ugly Tuna Saloon closed. This was the last time that Brian Shaffer has been seen. It was possible investigators realized that Shaffer could have changed his clothes in the bar or put on a hat and kept his head down, hiding his face from the cameras, like he wanted to walk away from everything and change his identity. He might have also left the building by another route. A service store, not generally used by the public, was a short distance from where Brian was last seen. This exit led to a first-floor hallway, which featured access at the time to a construction area with its own exterior exit. Some officers believed that this would have been difficult to walk through while sober, less as, intoxicated, as Shaffer was likely at the time probably pretty intoxicated. However, the cameras in that area also might have missed Shaffer. One pan across the area constantly and the other operated manually. Officers next looked to the footage from other bars to see if cameras could explain how Shaffer had left the Ugly Tuna Saloon. However, footage from cameras at 3 other nearby bars showed no trace of Shaffer. So the search began to fan out from the Ugly Tuna Saloon, with officers sometimes accompanied by police dogs looking closely in the street, inspecting dumpsters and waste containers, asking residents if they have seen him. Flyers bearing his picture showing a tattoo on his upper right arm of a stick figure logo from the cover artwork for a single of Alive by Pearl Jam, one of his favorite bands, and noting a distinctive fleck in one of the irises of his eyes. So he has some pretty distinctive features. Police even persuaded the city of Columbus to let them into the sewer system and search inside there. No useful information was uncovered. At Shaffer's apartment on King Avenue, 6 blocks from the bar, his car was still parked outside. Nothing inside seemed to be amiss. After searching miles away from the Ugly Tuna Saloon in every direction, police began considering other possibilities besides an accident or foul play. Since Shaffer's mother had recently passed away, it was speculated that he had gone away temporarily to grieve in solitude. Yet his disappearance proved permanent. No reasons appeared for him to voluntarily disappear. Those who had seen Shaffer that evening, included his father, were asked to take lie detector tests. He and Reed passed theirs, as did all the others, while Florence, his friend that was with him at the bar, refused to take a polygraph. The 2 women Brian had been last seen talking to were later identified, and they said in 2009 that they had never been asked to be interviewed or take one of the polygraph tests themselves. Alexis Wagner, the girlfriend, called Shaffer's phone every evening before going to bed for a long time after his disappearance. Usually it went straight to voicemail, but one night in September of 2006, it rang 3 times. I kept calling it to hear it purely because it was one of the best sounds I have ever heard, even if no one picked up, she wrote on her MySpace page. Shaffer's wireless provider said what Wagner heard may have been due to a computer glitch. A ping from the phone was detected at a cell phone tower in Hilliard, 14 miles northwest of Columbus. Police received many tips, none of which resulted in any breakthrough in the case. At a Pearl Jam concert later that year in Cincinnati, lead singer Eddie Vedder took time between songs to ask for tips of Shaffer's disappearance, but none were useful. Possible sightings in Michigan, Texas, even Sweden were investigated. Randy Shaffer, who had recently suffered the death of his wife, continued to search for his son on his own. A psychic was even consulted, told him that Shaffer's body was in water near a bridge pier. He and Derek, Brian's younger brother, along with some other citizens who had become interested in the case, bought waders and spent much of their free time alongside the shore of I can never pronounce this river, Olentangy River, which flows through Columbus adjacent to the OSU campus, searching in vain for the body near bridges. This possibly also led police to briefly consider an heavily disputed smiley face murder theory. Columbus police eventually rejected any connection to that alleged killer in Shaffer's case, following the lead of most law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, that may have looked into it. So, the death of Randy Shaffer, and 2 years later, September 2008, during a heavy windstorm, the father, Randy Shaffer, was clearing some debris in his yard at home, and a branch blew off from a nearby tree and fatally struck him. Neighbors found his body the following day and called the police. That's so sad. Like, he never knew what happened to his son. That's so sad. After his obituary ran online, a condolence book was posted. One of the signatures said, "To Dad, love Brian, U.S. Virgin Islands." Now that's insane, right? Like, was somebody playing a bad prank, awful joke, or was it really Brian? And was he actually in the Virgin Islands? This suggested that Brian may have left Columbus for a new life. However, upon further investigation, the note was found to have been posted from a computer at the Franklin County Public Library. It was determined to be a hoax. That's so messed up. Who would do that? So shortly after Randy's death, Neil Rosenberg, an attorney for Florence, wrote to Don Corbett, a private investigator who has volunteered his time to help the Shaffer family find Brian, which is pretty much just his younger brother that's left, I do believe. So regarding his client's ongoing refusal to take a lie detector test, Rosenberg intimidated that he had learned that the Columbus police investigating the case believed Brian Shaffer was alive. If Brian is alive, which is what I'm led to believe after speaking with the detective involved, then it is Brian, not Clint, who is causing his family pain and hardship, Rosenberg wrote. Brian should come forward and end this. Rosenberg maintained that his client had nothing to hide and that he already shared everything that he knew from the beginning, and Rosenberg did not see the value of Florence doing so again. Rosenberg's assertions notwithstanding, many of those who were close to Brian have criticized Florence for not being forthcoming enough. As soon as the detective started getting involved, that's when he pretty much had no contact with anybody, recalled his younger brother Derek. I've always thought he definitely knows something, just won't come forward with it. He believes it's still possible that his brother is alive and Florence knows where he might have gone. If Brian did take off somewhere, if that's the case, we just always had a strong feeling that Clint would possibly know what happened. Alexis Wagner also thinks that Florence is withholding information, but believes that it's likely her former boyfriend is dead and did not run off. So she said, in quote, and I can't imagine he would have done that. So that's really sad. The brother hopes that he's alive. The girlfriend probably hopes that he's alive, but doesn't want to be like, well, he ran away from me, you know? That's really sad. In 2014, Columbus police said that they were still receiving at least 2 tips a month on the case or Crime Stoppers hotline, though none has been proven useful. The evidence in the case filled our boxes of files. One of the original investigators, Andre Edwards, told the Columbus Monthly that after an extensive review of the camera footage at the Ugly Tuna Saloon from the night Brian Shaffer disappeared, which was intended to rule out the idea that he could have left in a disguise. He could say that, with 100% certainty that Shaffer did not leave the escalator. Police say that they have 3 theories about the case, but decline to discuss them, even generally, with anyone. So in 2019, an image of an alleged American homeless man in Tijuana, Mexico, bearing the resemblance of Brian Shaffer, began circulating online. Columbus news stations forwarded the image to the detective in the case in 2020. The detective sent the image to the FBI facial recognition, which ruled out Shaffer as the identity of the man. In another update in March of 2021, the Bureau of Criminal Investigations released an age-progressed photo of what Brian Shaffer might look like at the age of 42, nearly 15 years after his disappearance. So between the time of Shaffer's disappearance and his own death, Randy joined the families of other missing adults in Ohio, lobbying the state legislature to pass establishing a statewide protocol for such cases. At the time Shaffer disappeared, it was left up to individual departments to handle the cases, and some felt that investigations into their relatives' disappearance had suffered as that result. And by the time Randy died, the bill had become law. So he did something for his son anyway with how disappearance cases are handled. So good on him. But that's still sad that he passed away just 2 years after his son disappeared. For anyone who has any information available on the disappearance of Brian Shaffer, Ohio Crime Stoppers has offered a $100,000 reward. Okay, so this is a little comment that I found while researching this topic. The username is called Before They Silence Me. It's a little lengthy. It's a theory, but the comments caught my eye because this is something that all these articles aren't really touching on, and it's the music industry. So it says, posted 9 months ago on Reddit, Before They Silence Me, here's some food for thought. He made a connection with someone in the music industry as he claimed to only be doing the doctor thing until his band gets noticed, and then he would be fully focused on music. I summarize, he didn't get the break he wanted, and after losing his mother, he became super depressed, and through his connections as a doctor, he met someone who would be willing to disappear him while offering him a chance to be famous in death. I absolutely believe that he offered himself as a sacrifice as long as he got to be famous for being missing, with the promise of having his favorite singer, Eddie Vedder, mention his name. So, he even had a tattoo of Pearl Jam on his arm, and that's why I'm pretty sure Eddie Vedder, the lead singer of Pearl Jam, was his favorite singer. On stage at the concert, Eddie pulled up a small piece of paper that said something along the lines of, here's one of our biggest fans, Brian Shaffer. He was one of us, and says a few more things before he is done and says, if for a second time, he was one of us. So what exactly did Eddie Vedder mean by calling Brian Shaffer one of them? What the dude played music just like Eddie, so Eddie thought it was an idea to say he was one of them, and not only say it once, but specifically say it twice that Brian was one of them. It makes no sense. I think dude was willing to get sacrificed as long as his favorite band mentioned him on stage. He felt like he had nothing to live for after failing to make it into the music industry after losing his mom. And it goes on to say, this reminds me of the second Purge movie where the two girls have a granddad who offers himself to be ritually purged in order for his daughters to be safe. And even though the people who promised him that he didn't keep their word, at least a guy or people that Brian made a deal with lived up to it, and told coerced made Eddie Vedder stop in the middle of a show to give a shout out to some missing guy he didn't even know. Seems kind of sketchy. I don't know how Brian would have met someone or would have not that much pull in the music industry, but I definitely think it's what happened. Even the statement the cops made during this investigation saying he must have gone out through the back seems sketchy. It's as if it was all planned out, even with the cops to help cover it up, maybe. You can still find video of Eddie Vedder giving Brian the shout out on YouTube. It's weird. It says, there's so much more to this story than people know. I think the government in America has a bunch of cameras set up in national parks, and there's a group of bidders and a group of grab guys. When people show up to these state parks and national forests, the hidden cameras in the trees and whatnot pick them up throughout the parks, and the bidders begin bidding on them. Once they get isolated from their groups, they grab guys pop up from the secret underground entrance. Almost every state park and national forest has a cave system running under it, similar to the deep underground military bases, I suppose. Then grab the person and slip back into the secret bunker cave entrance, and the highest bidder, like the Hostile movies, gets pretty much whatever they want to that person. Then, it really went on a rabbit hole spiral there with that comment, but the music industry is kind of messed up if you think about it. So this next comment says, from obvious truth, this was 3 years ago. He obviously got drugged because he knew the staff at the Ugly Tuna was selling heroin and drugs. I mean, a little weird, if you ask me. So this last comment is from 5 years ago from Herb Williams. So this guy was a grad from OSU that's making this comment, and he's familiar with the area. He says there are huge problems with data processing above. The car, his cell phone, and credit cards are untouched bank accounts. None of the above is mentioned by the cell phone, which he carried with him, was found at the apartment. Why was his cell phone found at his apartment? That's a very interesting question. He was last there at his apartment because of the credit cards and the phone, because he would have had those at the Ugly Tuna Saloona. So he did make it home. So it also says, there lies the solutions. The disappearance occurred due to credit cards and wallet presumed in his mobile phone and care nearby at the apartment. Maybe they meant car. How would he have made his exit from Columbus? His friend could have enabled it, a train or bus station, and then south to the warmer climes. Very common in the Midwest during the Rust Belt times in Ohio. After that, ignored by the above by the wiki article, he disappeared, assuming no DNA evidence at his apartment other than his girlfriend. He just simply disappeared. He's smart enough to have done that. CCTV evidence from near the apartment did not mention either. He simply disappeared, but the wallet was gone. If it was gone and then he left it, and abandoned tracing CC's mobile, and likely got another one and left for the South or West Coast. Med school is very tough at OSU. Men are known to just leave before becoming a graduate, and many great ones have fallen, or soon after marriage as well. This is interesting. The higher the distance traveled, the tracing problem arises as the square of the distance. He likely left taking cash with him, not his cards, and disappeared somewhere else, possibly meeting a bad end out of the area or living in the U.S. under an assumed name. He's clearly bright enough to get into med school. He's capable of that, especially if planned it too. Too many unanswered questions ignored above, though, and those need to be addressed. That's interesting. So I will include these comments in this article that they are commenting on, as well as, the missing person flyer. So yeah, that was the disappearance of Brian Shaffer at the Ugly Tuna Saloona. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you do have any information on the disappearance of Brian Shaffer, please call Central Ohio Crime Stoppers. It's spooky story time, submitted by you, the listener. If you have a spooky story and you want to share it on my podcast, please email me at underthemoonparapod@gmail.com, and I will read your story on the show. So I'm going to Waverly Hills in May with Dalen Spratt, one of the Ghost Brothers. So I had a point all. Like, I wanted people to send me their spooky stories about Waverly Hills, their own personal stories. So this whole thread here is about the parking lots. I'm going to share a couple of these about the parking lot. All right. So back in 2014, we had just finished our second overnight at Waverly Hills. We got in our car and shut the doors. We told the spirits they couldn't follow us and they had to stay there. Right after I said that, we both heard a male chuckle. We both heard it. We were the only two people in the car. The doors were shut, the windows up, and the radio was off. And I hadn't started the car yet. As far as I know, nothing followed us home. Spooky. And this one's from Judy Bouquet. Not in the vehicle, but both of us in the car experienced something unexplained on our drive home. I saw a little boy sitting on a chain link fence, which is very thin and hard to balance on, wearing what was a blue and light blue striped shirt and pants, and looked like he had a train conductor hat on. This was after an overnight investigation about 5 a.m. We were also on a major road with lights. After my friend dropped me off at home, he had his own experience. He took the back roads home and saw a man running beside his truck at the same speed he was going, about 50 miles per hour. No other traffic, just cornfields on both sides. He freaked out completely and sped up. He didn't see it again. We both live in the country. I did smudge everyone outside the gate before we left, only 12 of us total, and asked that nothing follow us or attach itself to us. And it still has me very curious. Did the beings or spirits from Waverly Hills follow us? I don't know. This happened around 10 years ago. To add, Waverly is very active that night. My anxiety was so bad that I tapped out around 4 and sat in the lobby. I'm not sure if I'd go back. Whoa. That was 2 spooky stories about Waverly Hills. Definitely not going to let anything follow me home, for sure. For sure. No. This spooky story is submitted by Matthew Lutley. Okay, and it says, I lived in a real haunted house. The house was located outside of Fayetteville, Ohio, an old farmhouse that was built around 1915, where there were like 4 wells around the house, and only one of the wells looked really ancient, and it was located right next to the house underneath a great big twisted curly maple tree that was ancient itself, and half the tree was dead, knotty with holes going through the trees. Some type of trees on the property had fallen down, and they were so big I could fit in the tree, sitting Indian style. I don't like that term. You're sitting crisscross applesauce. The farmhouse had a basement, ground level, upstairs, and attic. An aerial view of the house and the upstairs was definitely the most haunted. Let me rephrase that. Most activity was seen upstairs of the house. There was also a permanent entity living in the basement. One of my niece's friends was over and she said, I know you all guys see ghosts and different things on your property. I've heard some stories. I haven't seen anything myself, but I will not go near your basement because every time I do, I get this intense feeling of fear. I told her it was definitely one of the entities. She could sense that the entity was casting off the feeling of fear, and the reason why it's doing that is because this is its home and space. So as a defense mechanism, the entity will make you feel intense feeling of fear because it wants you out of its space. I love the home and all the energy. It was never a dull moment, but I'd say those ghost entities kept me company many of nights. Okay, that's interesting. I know where Fayetteville is, so it's not very big, so I bet it's haunted out there. Okay, and this last story for this month is from Jody Javins. My grandmother passed away Thursday morning at home. She is my world, and we have a very close relationship. She was 73. My granddad called me, and I got there 10 minutes later. She was on end-of-life care, but it still felt quite sudden and unexpected, and obviously devastating. I struggled to sleep all Thursday night, and last night, I decided to get into bed earlier as I was drained and emotional. I was laying in bed crying, facing the wall with my back to the door, when I felt someone sit down on the bed next to me. It was unmistakably that the mattress moved exactly like somebody had just sat next to me. I didn't feel scared. I didn't fully feel at ease either, although it did stop me from crying. I was 100% not asleep. I just like to think it was my grandma that sat next to me. I definitely feel like it was your grandmother that sat next to you. Under the Moon Paranormal is created, written, produced, and hosted by me, Melanie. It is a 100% human-made podcast. No AI was used or harmed in the creation of this podcast. Music is produced and written for Under the Moon Paranormal by Bradley Yates. Give us a follow, like, subscribe, and share.
And as always, stay spooky.